Tonight's scripture reading will be from John 12 through 16, and John 18, 33 through 38. The next day, when the large crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took palm branches and went out to meet him. They kept shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel." Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it is written. "Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt." His disciples did not understand these things at first. However, when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written about him and that they had done these things to him. All right, John 18, 33. Then Pilate went back into the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me?" "I am not a Jew, am I?" Pilate replied. "Your nation and the chief priest handed you over to me. What have you done?" "My kingdom is not of this world," said Jesus. "If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." "You are a king then?" Pilate asked. "You say that I am a king," Jesus replied. "I was born for this, and I have come into this world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." "What is truth?" said Pilate. After he said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no grounds for charging him." This is the word of the Lord.
Well, good morning. I'm Phil, and believe it or not, I am one of the pastors here at Christ Fellowship Eastside. And yes, I do. For those of you who are visitors with us, you've been visiting over the last couple months, you are going like, "Who is this guy? I've never seen him before." And some of you who have been regulars may be thinking exactly the same thing. I don't know. But it is so good to be back with y'all. It is so good to, as well, just be able to have that freedom to take some time away, to rest, to reflect, to spend some time vacationing. This is a very unusual experience for me, and those of you who know me well know that I tend to wear a lot of hats, not like physical hats, but just a lot of job hats, and it tends to be something that, all my time gets pulled in different directions all the time. I pastor as well as full-time work, and then all my, past decade has been generally being pulled in directions of school or teaching or writing or editing or something else has been vying for my time. And so to basically be down to just one job, and even at that, my full-time job took some time away, and being able to just disconnect for a season was something very unusual for me. And so we did take some time, and was able to take some vacations with the family, went to Charleston, went to Pigeon Forge, and oddly enough, of all the random events, we're in Charleston and on the aircraft carrier there, and who do I run into but the Nyes? So great to see you guys there while on vacation. Great time, and then Pigeon Forge just got back last night or yesterday afternoon. And a great time there to kind of rest and relax with the family. And over the time, we've been out on Sundays. We've been visiting some of our other churches in the area, friends of our ministry. It's been really good to just kind of check in, reconnect with other pastors, and see what other churches are doing, and learning from them, as well as kind of saying hello and introducing our ministry in those spaces. So it's been a really beneficial time for me and my family in that regard. And then because I don't do really well when I don't have anything to do, I do very hobby sort of things that don't make sense to most people. So I went ahead and started compiling a bunch of my research for my dissertation, and started putting that into a database that is now probably the world's largest database on the book of Colossians. So very, very nerdy stuff, But it does have a purpose, allows me to do some research where I was able to deep dive into some of the earliest manuscripts of the book of Colossians and put together some research and writing on that hopefully will get published here fairly soon. I was able to learn some new skills and do some coding to show all the connections of the Bible from Old and New Testament, all the cross-references, all the allusions, citations that connect the whole Bible into one big interconnected story. So lots of fun, lots of things that I got to do that because I didn't have a lot going on. It was really fun. But then able to take some time away and just get some solitude and reflect, to study God's word at a deeper level, preparing for our series that we're going to be starting in the book of Acts that will kick off after Easter, and just really getting excited about that story of this is the church's story. This is our story, and giving us a good sense of where that is coming from. Just being able to spend some time in God's word, was able to complete a quick read, Genesis through Revelation. I really enjoyed the New Living Translation. I don't know if you guys have tried that. It's really, really great for quick overview, understanding of God's word. And then just really spending some time reflecting on kind of where are we at here at Christ Fellowship Eastside? What are the next steps we need to take over the next 5 years as we grow as a church together? So thank you for being patient with me, with my family. Thank you for being patient with the pastors. And pastors, thank you for being patient with me and filling gaps, and deacons stepping up, and so many of you stepping up and filling spots that needed to be handled. And I am just so excited to be back here and to be back with our church. I think one of the greatest joys for me of this whole thing is as we're going and visiting other churches and seeing what's going on, and we're packing up the kids into the car and everything, is we're rolling out and heading down Brushy Creek Road in that direction rather than this direction. And a couple of the girls pipe up and say, "But we want to go to our church." And that does my heart good. And I was just like, as a pastor, my kids don't have an option where they go to church. They have to go to this church, and so for them to be able to want to be at our church means the world to me, and it's just like that just killed me. And so our kids are glad to be back, our family's glad to be back, I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to open God's word with you this morning. This morning, we're going to be looking at these two passages. The first one kind of in brief, because it kind of sets up the tension, this question, which is John chapter 12, where the Jewish people initially are kind of wanting Jesus to be king in a sort of sense, as it were. And this is what happens on the very first Palm Sunday. Jesus enters into Jerusalem, and people are super excited to have him there. They pull out these palm branches. They're kind of thinking this is kind of this culminating event in Israel's history, and so they're celebrating Jesus coming in. But it turns out Jesus wasn't quite that kind of king that they were expecting. And so then the second passage fast forwards a bit to everything has gone sideways, and now Jesus is standing in front of Pilate, and Pilate's basically getting at the same thing that the Jewish people were getting at, which is, are you the king? And so it really prompts us to get at the idea that's really at the heart of Palm Sunday, and that is the question the Jewish people were asking, the question that Pilate's asking: who's in charge here? Are the Jewish leaders in charge? Is Pilate the one in charge? Is Jesus the one in charge? It's really this fundamental question of the first Palm Sunday, and I would submit to you, I think it's a fundamental question that all of us tend to live with, tend to wrestle with, tend to try to get to terms with in one shape or form. It's something that makes all the difference in our lives. We need to know who's in charge. In fact, this is something that from earliest childhood, this is the ultimate struggle, is who's in charge? Are mom and dad really in charge here? Do I get to call the shots on when bedtime is, or what I get to do, or what I get to eat? We wonder about who's in charge when it comes to our teachers, when it comes to all our surroundings, all of our authorities. And we think that, hey, as I get older, move out of childhood into teenage years, into young adult phases, get to college, all of that starts to melt away. I don't need to think about who's in charge anymore, right? Well, sorry to burst your bubble if you're still kind of moving into that phase. The question of who's in charge only gets more serious, more demanding, more life and death, as it were. We are shaped by those who are in charge of us, our employers, our government, even the invisible hand of the economy shapes so much of what we do and how we live. So that reality of who's in charge is not going to go away the older you get or the higher you climb, the more money you make. It only actually gets more frustrating, something that you can't really get your hands around. I would think about it this way. I have a number of friends who've really made it in the business world. They've really climbed the ranks. They've really made a ton of money, built successful companies, great entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff. And I look at them, and almost every one of them is heavily involved in politics. Like that just consumes so much of their time and energy and thought and everything. And I'm like, why is it that you've made it? You've accomplished everything. Why is politics so, something that you throw your life? It's because they realize that at the end of the day, their business is only as successful as the politicians that are pulling the strings on their contracts and on the state government or the national government. And so they realize there's still forces that are in control. I'm not the captain of my fate. I'm not the one who's ultimately in charge here. I'm blown around by the whims of other people. I mean, if you don't believe me, just think about all the people whose investment portfolios over the last couple weeks or month have drastically changed one way or another based on world events. You are not in charge of your own destiny. Isn't that a scary sort of reality when that begins to sink in? I'm not as in charge as I think I am. And so in this passage, we're really pressed into this question of who's in charge, who's really in charge. And so as we enter this passage, I want us to kind of wrestle with this in four different moves. Number one is an impasse, why we don't think Jesus is in charge. In John chapter 12, we get Jesus entering in on a donkey. It says in verse 12, it said, the next day a large crowd had come to the festival and heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him. They kept shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it is written, do not be afraid, daughter Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt. These are people long oppressed, longing for solutions, longing for someone to come who's going to be in charge and fix everything for them. And so they think at this point, hey, we've got this newfound king who's going to make everything. He's going to set everything to rights again. And they have a very narrow vision of what this king is supposed to do. He is supposed to be a revolutionary ruler who's going to come in, he's going to kick out the Romans, clean house, make everything right again. He's going to make the nation successful. He's going to make them prosperous once more. He's going to make Israel great again. And so they have this vision of what this is supposed to include. But Jesus has already been giving them clues. He's already been pushing back on this. John chapter 6, he's got a bunch of people who've just been fed miraculously, and they're going, hey, this is the leader. This is the guy that's going to take us in, and we're going to, he could feed an entire army single-handedly. Isn't this amazing? And so they're all surrounding him, and what does he do? He presses them in, and he says, no, you got to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And they go, wait, what? This isn't the guy we thought we were supposed to be following here. This doesn't sound right. And it says a bunch of them just walked away and stopped following him. Jesus refuses to let them make him king in the sense that they thought this was supposed to go down. So after the celebrations of John 12 begin to dissipate, the leaders of the people begin to realize we've got to do something about this. Because if this guy keeps doing this kind of thing and stirring up this kind of momentum, it's going to bust up everything for us. All of the status quo, all the positions and negotiations we've made with the Romans and all that, that's going to be gone in a moment's notice if we don't do something about this Jesus. And so they put him on trial with Pilate. And so that's where we get to John 18, where we're going to spend the majority of our time this morning. John 18 details Jesus' arrest, plays that out in slow motion detail, gives us question by question here of what Jesus says to this key question that Pilate's really trying to get at is, Jesus, are you really in charge? And the text says, then Pilate went back into the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Are you the king of the Jews? At some point in college or businessy things, I was told never ask closed questions. Closed questions are yes/no questions, right? That they only have two options. Open-ended questions are meant to be questions that get really good responses, reflective. What are some things that interest you? What are your hobbies? Those kinds of questions. So if you're on a date, open-ended questions, good. Closed-ended questions, bad. Closed-ended questions shut down the conversation, just end up in very flat, binary, yes/no kinds of answers. What Pilate proposes to Jesus is a closed question. There's only a yes or a no answer that's possible with Pilate's question. It's not a very good question. But for what Pilate is trying to get at, he assumes that this is a great way. Because the two answers are either, yes, I am king of the Jews, which would satisfy a lot of Jewish people right now. That would satisfy a lot of the zealots that are ready to kick out the Romans. And this would really get to the heart of what exactly is going on with Jesus. What is he up to here? And so they would get that answer. They would get that line in the sand. Okay, Jesus is here to fight the evil empire of Rome. Okay, great. So either that, or the answer is, no, I am not king of the Jews. That's not my title, that's not my calling, that's nothing to do with me. And that's the ideal answer that Pilate wants to hear. He wants, hey, if Jesus just says, nope, not me, okay, you're free to go, and I don't really care what they have to say, we're done here. Case closed. He doesn't claim it. And so there's really this press of he's asking them this closed-ended question. Yes, I am king of the Jews. No, I am not. And really presses him with, I'm going to do the red pill or the blue pill. Which way do you go here? There's really just two options on the table from Pilate's perspective. But is that all there is? This is where Jesus shifts the equation as you move on down into the passage. As Jesus answers in verse 34, are you asking this of your own, or have others told you this about me? Jesus is about to blow open Pilate's closed way of thinking about everything. Not just about who's in charge, but what is reality itself. And that's what we need as we move into Easter and as we begin thinking about the work of Christ on our behalf and who Jesus really is. We need this Pilate mind-blowing moment to happen in our lives. We need the eyes to come open as we shift gears and see who Jesus really is. One way to frame this or think about this is as Laura and I were in Pigeon Forge over the weekend or the past week, I was reflecting back on some of the times that we have been there in the past. And the very first time that we went there together was back in 2009 when we were celebrating our first wedding anniversary. So you can do the math and start figuring all this out for yourself. And there in those early days of the 21st century, we were gifted a cabin for 3 days to celebrate, and so we were trying to find this place. Now, what you need to know about the early 21st century is we didn't have cell phones that had GPS in them. Okay, we didn't have that. What we did have were these boxes that you could put on the dashboard of your car, and that would tell you where to go if you had money. And we did not, because we were newlyweds and poor and did not have anything for those sorts of things, those luxuries. And so you did what everybody did who did not have those luxuries, was you used this great thing called MapQuest. Now, if you are below, I don't know, if you're a Gen Z at this point, you're probably thinking MapQuest, that sounds like an amazing video game or something like that. And like, this sounds really fun. MapQuest, yeah, throwback, really brought you back there. MapQuest was like Google Maps without Google or really maps. I mean, it was just... It was a rough sort of thing. You put in your destination, you put in where you're coming from, and you would get a series of directions that you needed to take. It's like that part of the Google Maps thing. And then you do this thing where you hit print, and it comes out on paper. And then you take the paper, and it's got like little tiny maps that kind of show you where things are, kind of, if you look real close. And so you would just start following the turn left, turn right. And so we're going along on these back roads behind, somewhere near Pigeon Forge, and it'll tell you, 2 miles to the next turn, whatever. And so we're just going, and like you're trying to look at the odometer. It's like, we're at 24 or 25, I can't remember, And so you're trying to do math in the head while driving and trying to be a good husband and carry on conversation and all this. It's just too much. And so eventually it's like, I think we're past the 2 mile mark. Like, I think we're more in the 10 mile mark here. And so we pull off to the side of the road and you start looking at these little microscopic maps. And I'm like, I don't see any of these street names, and these aren't matching up with any. We've gone off the map. We can't find ourselves anymore. And so your only option is just to whip a U-ey, go all the way back until the last thing that you actually confidently had, and then work back forward from there. It's ridiculous. Grateful for all the wonders of technology and Google Maps and all of that. But all that to say, being off the map is a very scary and unsettling sort of feeling when you don't know where you're at, when you've now entered uncharted territory. This is what's happening to Pilate in this passage. He's now entered the uncharted territory of the unknown, where Jesus is not going to answer his yes-no question, at least not the way he expected it. It's not even on Pilate's map what Jesus is going to say to him in this moment. And so Jesus really responds in 3 particular ways. Number 1, he personalizes the whole thing. Verse 34, he says, "Are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me?" "I'm not a Jew, am I?" Pilate replied. "Your own nation, the chief priests, handed you over to me. What have you done?" See, what Jesus does, first of all, the first move he makes is to shift the spotlight over to Pilate. He's saying, I could answer your yes-no question in a very simplistic way that you're not going to understand, but let me first ask you where you're at. Why are you asking this question, Pilate? Think about how you assess me for a moment. See, that's where we ultimately get a little uncomfortable around times like this of Palm Sunday and Easter, where we're kind of forced to think about this whole Jesus and Christianity thing, and to reckon with, like, hey, is this like really real? Did this stuff actually happen? And then if it did, then what implication does that have for how I live in my entire life? Like, what does that do to everything? And that's what Palm Sunday is meant to do for us. It's meant to personalize. It's meant to kind of move into our life and make us uncomfortable. Because now we're having to ask the question, am I coming up with these assumptions about Jesus? Or did I derive them from someone else? Am I getting like secondhand information and secondhand beliefs about Jesus? Or what exactly do I believe about Jesus? See, that's what Jesus is trying to get us to. He's trying to move us into that wrestling with, where are you at on this question? And then second, he localizes. He explains his true country of origin. Verse 36, he says, "My kingdom is not of this world, said Jesus. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. Saying you've got the whole question wrong. Your assumption of what a king is and what it means to be king of the Jews is not even within the frame of reference that I'm talking about. You're looking at, within the physical boundaries and authority of Rome. What about this province here? Does Jesus claim to be ruler over this province of Rome? And he's saying, no, that's not what it's about. It's like sitting the president of the United States down and saying, do you claim to be in charge over Greenville, like mayor of Greenville? It's irrational. It doesn't make sense. Those are two vastly different sorts of things. And so then Jesus goes on to specify in verse 37, when Jesus is asked, are you a king then? Pilate's still stuck on, one thing. Jesus says, you say that I'm a king, Jesus replied. I was born for this, and I have come into the world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. He said, my mission specifically is not the kind of kingly mission you assume. You assume that kings come in by force and by might to rule and subjugate. That's what the Jewish people want me to do. That's the paradigm that you operate from. But I'm actually on a peace mission. I'm on a mission to bring the truth, to set you free. I'm doing something very different. As the king come from heaven, the king of all the universe come here on an urgent kingly assignment. And so in the face of Pilate's yes or no sort of question, Jesus shows, I'm not confined to your simple system. I'm not confined to your simple yes, no. I'm not confined to your way of viewing, in fact, the entire world around you. And so really what Jesus does is Jesus breaks into the problem, the confines of how we all tend to live our lives. Jesus actually, in doing what he's doing, the way he's pressing and the way he's saying, I'm in charge, answers a real ache that's in our hearts of how we live our existence in this world. Jesus' response points out the existence of some other realm, some other world that's collided into our own. See, Pilate can operate with these closed questions because he operates within a closed system of reality. Pilate does not operate with an open system. Christians and non-Christians tend to default to a very closed system way of thinking. What do I mean by that? Closed system thinking says there is a bounded set of options, choices, and outcomes in this world. And that those options, choices, and outcomes are things that this bag of electrical impulses and chemical reactions responds to with 5 senses. And so everything that I can put under a microscope, look at through a telescope, I can assess to be real and true and verifiable. And I operate only with reference to my 5 senses. And that which I can assess with those 5 senses is all that is real. There is nothing beyond that. That is closed system thinking. So I have to operate exclusively on what I can verify with my 5 senses. And we do that in contradiction to what we know to be true. We know from literature, art, beauty, abstract mathematics, our imagination, our feeling of love, that either I have to pretend those away as like some kind of evolutionary process that just kind of came up within me, or these are real things that tether to something beyond the closed system in which I tend to operate, the things that I lock out of my existence. And so as a result, every person on the planet longs for something more, something beyond, something deeper, a reality that we try to live our lives either ignoring or chasing to our own futility. And as a result, when we operate with Pilate's narrow frame of reference, that closed system thinking, we end up excluding ourselves from a lot of things. And it results in these warped, twisted behaviors that we see in ourselves and we hate about ourselves. I think when you live with that closed system thinking, when you live purely with reference to the physical things around you, which again, as Christians, it's very easy to wake up, form your decisions about your day, your plan for the week, everything that you're doing simply on the material world around you, and to operate just like Pilate does. We just call it autopilot. I don't know. And so you live in this closed system way of thinking, and it results in different kinds of reactions. One is a sense of pride. So if all that exists is the material world that I can, well, that gives me great confidence that I can wrap my brain around science. I can wrap my brain around mathematics. I can wrap my brain around physics. If I can do all of that, or if humanity has done that, or if I have access to all of that through AI, well, I should be incredibly proud that I have answers to everything now. I have all the solutions because all that lies within a box. I can figure it all out, and we're good. This is what leads to this reaction of what's often called chronological snobbery. This sense of, human progress is always just leveling us up, and now we're like way above the past generation, way above all these predecessors. Who are they to make any kind of claims in regard to truth? It's what leads to this really confident, like God is dead kind of commentary. Was, it's ridiculous that anybody would believe in God, because we have excluded God from the box. We operate within a closed system. We've searched the extent of it, and it's done. There's no God in that box. And so it leads to a sense of pride, or can lead to a sense of despair. This can come from a number of angles. One can be as we discover more and more of our known universe, there's less and less to discover. There's less and less wonder. There was always part of me as a little boy when I thought about the stories of Christopher Columbus and all these adventurers and the first astronauts going into space. And there's kind of this like, man, I want to do that. Like, I want to find a new island or something, and Robinson Crusoe or something. I want to live on an island somewhere that nobody even knows about. It's like, oh yeah, but they found them all. Like, okay. There's all these like wonder-busting moments as a kid as you grow up. And so like there's that sense of like, man, like I wish there was more to life than what I've got. In fact, by all of our reckoning, we lead to this place where we get very empty and unfulfilled with the realities that are around us. And so, it's no wonder this leads to patterns of self-harm or nihilistic behaviors, or this sense of, I talk to some people who are just constantly on the hamster wheel of kind of therapeutic activity and getting nowhere, achieving no progress in their lives, but just constantly frustrated, in despair, existentially, not over some particular thing, but just like life is terrible. Or it leads to a space of delusion. And this is where I think a lot of us unintentionally go, is we develop coping mechanisms for living within the box. Like if this is all life has to offer, is just the material stuff, the job, the home, the kids, the stuff that's in front of me, making an income so I can pass it on to the next generation, so they can make an income and pass it on to the next generation, and what's the point? And so what we do is we artificially say, I know there has to be more than this, and so I'm going to try to find experiences that allow me to escape. It allows me to have some touch with some spiritual reality beyond the box. And so people go into states of delusion. And that's where we get endless streaming or abuse of alcohol and drugs, involvement with the occult, gaming binges, pornography, AI fantasy companionship, mysticism, doom scrolling, gambling. Like all of those are experiences that are trying to achieve some kind of ecstatic spiritual experience outside the box. That's really what we're doing in those moments. We're fumbling in the dark for something beyond, something that's not locked away in the stuff we can see and feel and hear and taste. It's looking for the experience beyond. And it's until you realize that's actually what I'm doing. when I'm chasing that addictive, compulsive behavior that feels so controlling in my life, what I'm doing is I'm fumbling for something beyond the material realm. It's only then that you really get to, here's why, and here's how I can address this, and here's how I can find hope. So I don't have to live in this delusional system. Jesus says, I'm pointing you beyond all of that. I'm pointing you to a spiritual realm ruled by King Jesus. Contrary to Pilate's assumption of power, Jesus is the real one who's in charge of this new spiritual reality. He has every right to rule over our lives in the entire universe. And that spiritual realm is something that is currently, has already, and is currently breaking into our physical realm. Jesus has broken into the box. Jesus has come to reshape our thinking of reality itself. He's come into the world for this. I've come to the world for this, to testify to the truth. There is a truth and a reality that extends beyond our own, something that transforms our. Why is it that the great muscle flex of Pilate's might is I can send you to the cross, becomes the muscle flex of Jesus for all of eternity? The cross is radically transformed from the thing inside the box that says Rome is in charge, Pilate's in charge, look who's in charge, to say, no, that is not how this world is going to work. There is a spiritual reality that has broken in and has transformed the world as we know it, power as we know it, everything as we know it, and says, look who's in charge. Jesus is in charge. And so that leads us kind of back to where Jesus started with Pilate, is we need to make an examination of what's got to change if Jesus is really in charge. If Jesus is who he says he is. If we're looking at this passage and saying, okay, I've got to take Jesus at face value, Jesus at his word, then what does this mean for me personally? It's going to mean that some things are going to have to change. Number one, there is a change in personality that's going to happen. If Jesus is in charge, I'm now free to live in a way that moves away from pride and toward humility, a way that moves me away from despair and towards hope, and a way that moves me away from delusions and toward a real robust humanity. A lot of you would say, like, that's the kind of person I want to be friends with. That left-hand column, I don't really like hanging out with those kinds of people. I know one guy that if he reaches out to me, I get the Facebook message that pops up, and I'm going, oh, like, I know that it's like he's gonna. I'm gonna say, hey, how are you doing? And he's gonna say, terrible. And he's gonna ask me, hey, how are you doing? And I'm gonna say, actually okay. And and he's gonna tell me about sickness and divorce and all the terrible things that have defined his life and that crush his soul. And then he's going to go, how's your family? And I'm going to go, like, okay. And because for him, the despair has just completely absorbed everything about his life. Like, he cannot see any light, any hope. He operates with a sense of great pride of, like, everybody has done this to me. I'm this great guy on this pedestal, and everybody else has wronged me and done everything against me. And so I just, like, I don't really have a whole lot to say to this guy. And I love him, and I want to communicate with him, but it's really hard. And some of you have had those kinds of experiences where I'm just like, this is so hard. When somebody's operating out of this place of pride, despair, delusion, like, it is really hard to get close to somebody like that. But what Jesus does is he frees us to live in a radically different way. Like, when I don't have to have all the answers to everything, but I know the one who does, like, I can be free to live with just immense humility. Like, I don't have to figure it all out. I don't have to science my way out of every problem in this world. I can just trust the one who's got it under control. Allow Jesus to manage everything instead of me trying to manage Jesus. When I can move away from despair and cling on to hope, that there's more to life that meets the eye. Look, if this life is all you have, like if this is it, and eventually like it all just goes away and we die and we all just kind of eventually billions of years from now freeze and when the sun burns out, like what a miserable existence this is. But if there's something beyond the closed system, well, then I can live with hope because there's something more than what meets the eye. And I can live, instead of trying to find delusions, escapes from reality, I can live a full human life. I can really, truly find joy in all of life, work, marriage, raising children, like all of these things. I can enjoy tastes of joy in this life and experience them to the fullest. Why? Because I'm not looking to them to escape this life. I'm not looking at my kids trying to find a doorway out of this life into some kind of existential experience where, I'm able to live out the unfulfilled dreams of my childhood or something through them vicariously. Like I'm freed from all of that if I'm not trying to look at my kids or my job or my success or my money as a doorway out of the closed system, but because Jesus has made a doorway in. He shows me that those things are immensely valuable. Those are immensely good because they are gifts from God to me to show me that there is something beyond. There is something outside the box. So I can enjoy them as gifts rather than as gods. This will change your personality. It'll change your politics. That doesn't mean that you're going to change your votes or your thinking about who's the best person or something, any of that. I'm just saying, if Jesus is in charge, if there is a spiritual reality beyond this, isn't that immensely freeing? I remember talking to a guy who was just like, he was constantly depressed, constantly anxious, and we start talking, and I was like, well, where do you spend most of your time? Like, what do you read a lot? What do you listen to? And he's like, man, I just love talk radio. It's just like I have it on while I'm working all the time. And I was like, okay, have you thought about maybe not? Like, just try silence or like the Bible or something else, anything else. Like, try something else for a time. And so a month later, he reaches out to me. He's like, man, this month, like, I'm just like I'm thinking so clearly. I'm not as depressed anymore. I was like, he's like, it really worked. Like just shutting all that off for a moment. And it's not to say that it's wrong. It's just that as we get consumed by things that are going on, consumed by the stuff that we can't control, we don't have our fingers into, it can destroy your soul. It'll eat you from the inside out. And this is what happens when you get, it's the same conundrum that Jesus finds himself confronting, Rome or Jerusalem? Is it royalist or rebel? Are you right or left? Are you patriot or progressive? When you make all that your God and you have to bow to that, it really wrecks everything. So I would encourage you to assess, what do I think or listen to most in my life? When it comes to politics, do I get really angry when my team faces a setback? Do I get really excited when my team scores a win? How do I treat others that don't view it the same way as I do? Do I tend to love talking about my politics more than I love talking about Jesus? These are transformations that begin to happen when we say, it's not that we don't care about politics. It's not that we don't vote. It's not that we don't have political opinions. Those are all fair game. But we hold on to them loosely when we realize who's ultimately in charge. And then lastly, it'll change your passions. If Jesus is in charge, then I'm not really looking for satisfaction in all the tangible things of this earth. Colossians 3:1 puts it this way: so if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. I always struggled with that verse. Like, I would read it and just go, like, that just sounds so surreal. Like, it almost seems detached in a way. But that's really what Jesus is calling us to, is not that we don't care about the things of earth anymore, but that really, because our passions are so oriented to this reality beyond our own, we're now free to not be consumed by the things of this earth. We can hold those things in a very different sort of way. So this Palm Sunday, as you reflect on this passage, as you think about this passage, I would urge you to think about the question, if you looked at your life, who would you say is really in charge? Are you operating your entire life in this closed system, in this materialistic way of thinking of just all the stuff that's around me is the things that I have to make all my decisions around? Or am I operating on some other basis, some other reality? Jesus is the king, I tell you. And he has come not so that you can fit him into your grid. He's come to fit you into his. He's come to transform everything as we know it. And that transformation has already started and will one day come to completion. That's what we as Christians hold on to. It's a hope. It's something that brings immense humility rather than pride. And it brings a great humanity to the way that we live. So the only question for us left is, how will we respond to the one who's in charge? Let's pray. Jesus, this morning we bow before you as our King. And we look for the day when this reality that you rule and reign within becomes true of the reality that we tend to operate most of our lives within. Lord, I pray that you would help us to have eyes for the spiritual, eyes that see what you're up to. Lord, I pray that you would help us to long for the day of restoration, long for more people to experience your truth and your freedom, more people to experience your kingdom. Lord, may your spirit be at work in our hearts today, breaking up our pride, breaking in on our despair, that you would push away our delusive hopes and give us your hope. Ultimately, we pray that your kingdom would come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pray this in the mighty name of King Jesus.